do have some of our experts still waiting in the wings to help us make sense of what we know. We're going to recap that very press conference that you just watched and you just listened to live in its entirety here. Let's bring them into the conversation yet again. That's national security analyst and expert Hal Kemper and law enforcement analyst and expert David Katz. And gentlemen, that was just extremely difficult to listen to, though we did get a lot of new information, a lot of new details here. Let's just watch some of this video from the scene. This is the first moments we were made aware that a shooting had occurred in Midtown Manhattan today. Okay, I'm going to keep this up. This is from earlier this afternoon. Viewer discretion is advised. So this is what we know, that 5 victims in total were shot. 4 of those victims were shot and killed. The shooter is dead. One of these victims now is fighting for his life. That off-duty NYPD officer, he's an immigrant from Bangladesh. He's 36 years old. He was killed. He was a 3.5-year veteran of the department. He had a wife and 2 children with a 3rd child on the way. Of the victims that were killed in this, 2 of them were males. 1 of them was a female, and then the other injured victim is a male who is fighting for his life right now. The suspect died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And I want to put this up here. Take a look at this. Hal Kemper, I'll start with you. We know a lot more information now about this vehicle. And we didn't when we first brought it to our viewers. Skyfox overhead of the scene. We learned that the black BMW there is the suspect's car, that he drove specifically to New York City over the course of 2 days to carry out this attack from Nevada, stopping in Colorado, Nebraska, then New Jersey, getting to the city this afternoon here. So, Hal, what more are they going to do with that car?
They're going to look. They've already found, weapon in the car. They found extra ammunition. They found the gun case. But they're going to be looking at everything. If there's any computer, more to fill out where he was. It sounds like they got a pretty good track record on his trek across country. But they're going to find out a lot of different things. There may be receipts, other things in the vehicle that would be very useful. I have to say that with the FBI being involved, they do some forensic stuff, which is amazing what they will find. And they're going to go through that car completely and try to find out as much as they possibly can. Of course, the big fear is, did he have accomplices? Is there somebody he was talking to online? They're going to look beyond the car and look at all of his electronic media and everything else to try and find, is he connecting anything? Because that's the fear. The fear is there still a threat out there?
Yeah, and Jessica Tisch, the commissioner of the NYPD, said, though, that as of now, they are not looking at anyone else as part of their investigation. To your point, whether or not there was, outside assistance for this shooter, this suspected gunman, 27-year-old Shane Tamura of Las Vegas. David Katz, bringing you into the conversation now. Let's talk about what was confiscated from the vehicle after the search. A revolver. Also, we know more ammunition, more magazines, and medication. Las Vegas police alerting the NYPD that this suspect, that this gunman, had mental health issues. That's all they would divulge on that specific question. They didn't go into details about how Las Vegas police knew that, but you can make the assumption, you can make the leap, David, that he was known to Las Vegas law enforcement.
Yeah, I don't think that's a particularly large leap to take. The 2 inconsistent things that they mentioned was the fact that he has a concealed carry permit and they know him to have mental disabilities. That's outrageous. I mean, if he is known to the police department in any jurisdiction, first thing they do is check and see whether you got a permit. You pull that permit, and if this was New York City, for example, they'd visit the guy's house. They'd pull the guns out of the house. It's that's a mystery as to how they know the details of his ailment. If it is that in fact is in fact true, I'm sure that'll come out in the next couple of days.
Okay, so I want to move off some of these aerials over this black BMW. He got out of that car, walked onto the plaza of 345 Park Avenue, the Blackstone building, walked into the lobby. Hal, we got a very vivid graphic description of minute by minute, almost second by second, of how he did this. what it was going through his mind, the kind of order of operations, so to speak. I want to put this photo up yet again here, and you can comment on this. We learned what the rifle was. An M4, Hal? What is that? Does that look like an M4 to you? That's a large gun.
It's commonly called an AR, assault rifle. An M4, it's the civilian version, AR-15. It's I'm assuming it's semi-automatic, although there have been some witnesses that said they thought they heard fully automatic gunfire. Although witnesses tend to hear things, and there's echoes in an urban area. More than likely, it's semi-automatic. I should mention that if he's coming from Las Vegas, we don't know where he got the weapon yet, but I would say it's more than likely he picked it up in Las Vegas, because that's a pretty easy state to buy a variety of weapons in. He had the weapon. He's walking with determination. But then you heard in the press conference talking about his travels across the country. This is somebody, you look at him here, you look at him walking brazenly across into the building on Park Avenue, and then you hear about this determined trek that he took across the country without any significant breaks. And you get the feeling that this is somebody who was on a mission. He was going to that building for someone, something. He went in there. He obviously did some sort of, maybe online, maybe he's been to that building before in the past or something, but he seemed to know what he was doing, and he went right, basically shot his way to the elevator and went right to the elevator. A specific floor, was firing the weapon around that floor. Even let a woman who was on the elevator when he got on pass. And I find that kind of interesting. That's not somebody who's just randomly shooting anyone. That's somebody who is either someone eliminating whom they would presume would be a threat or something to stop them, and then going to a specific place to do an attack. I think we're going to find out a lot more about this, but I just find the whole purposeful nature of how he did this to be rather striking.
So, David, Hal, we're looking at the scene yet again. It's almost 11 p.m. We just lost the shot there. We do apologize. So I wanted to talk with you, David, now about the scene itself. We know it's contained, but the investigation is a large scene here. And I want to talk about this high-rise commercial office building in Midtown Manhattan. This was the scene of the crime. We're getting these new photos in. Take a look at this. Employees there, I'm not entirely sure what floor this was in the building itself. This has been obtained by Fox News. Employees who work there in the building barricading themselves where they are, putting office furniture near the door, piling it high, almost up to the ceiling. Now, what we know, David and Hal, was that he took the elevator up to the 33rd floor, where apparently that is the headquarters of the offices of Rudin Management, which, from what I've been reading, Rudin Management owns the Blackstone building. And he shot and killed one of the victims on the 33rd floor here. And you heard one of the questions being asked by a reporter, was that floor teeming with coworkers, employees at that time? And then, presumably, that is where he took his own life after his rampage was all said and done. What do these images speak to you, David?
Boy, that's a lot of ground to cover. So let's start back in 2016 when the City of New York passed Local Law 26. It was largely about sprinkler systems in buildings, but it also contained a provision that every high-rise office building, public assembly venue, and hotel needed to provide, in addition to fire and life safety training, specific training with active shooter response in mind. So, I mean, I was honored to be part of the fire department panel that put together the protocols for this, and that picture is exactly what we want people to do. We've been teaching this. We know it's the every occupant of those venues that I mentioned, at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, has to get some exposure to what to do in the event of an active shooter incident. They're taught to either avoid the shooter if possible, barricade if you can't avoid, and if you must, you confront the shooter. And that picture is exactly what we want people to do. And by the way, as tragic as the five, let's say the four victims, I'm not going to count the shooter, but the four victims, as tragic as that was, it could have been much, much worse. And I'm going to credit the training that's required by the City of New York and the fantastic response by the police department. There's no police department in the world that could do what the NYPD can in such a short time, putting that many officers on scene.
I mean, we were watching some of those scenes earlier. I'm going to play them again. The moment we got news that this was happening, I mean, take a look at this from earlier this afternoon. In Midtown Manhattan, of all places, 6:30 p.m. on a Monday night, people are leaving work. The scene of the crime, Hal and David, is a commercial high-rise office building. You see there, law enforcement from this afternoon assuming position behind their patrol vehicle. And this is when kind of everything started fluidly happening. You see there other officers. It took them some time, though, to contain the scene, as you would imagine. But the number of law enforcement, that is what everyone is kind of highlighting here. The number of law enforcement that descended on the scene so rapidly, so quickly, what was truly stunning. I've been hearing, not to diminish how absolutely terrible this story is, Hal, I've been hearing a lot that, including from the folks like yourself on other outlets, that they say this could have been so much worse, Hal.
Oh, absolutely. To repeat what David said, what they did with the training, run, hide, fight. That's kind of the national motto of what that is. The run is get out of there. If you can find an avenue of egress to get away from, that's the first thing you want to do. But with the hide, the thing that we do with hide is barricade, and we always emphasize the importance of barricade. And I do a lot of this training in Las Vegas for both public and private sector out there, and we emphasize the importance of barricading, and then of course being prepared to fight. Not your first course of action, but always talking about what they would do if they have to do that. And I do look at this kind of like David did, which is that it's tragic what happened. But considering how well he was armed, considering what he had, considering with the purpose and the directness with which he went to that floor, the fact that there aren't more casualties is really amazing. And that speaks to the training that was going on throughout New York City. Everybody has learned a lot in the last decade, and this training is required, not everywhere, but it should be required everywhere. But the training, when it's implemented, makes such a big difference. And I think you see that. I mean, you look at that and you go, wow, look at all the furniture piled up. And I'm saying, why is there any furniture not piled up? That's it's just they did exactly what they're supposed to do. But then again, I also look at the other side, which is once you've got the barricade and you feel it's secure, don't stand behind the door, do something like that. And I'm thinking the reason they put so much stuff there is they wanted to get a little distance. And I'm imagining that was something that somebody remembered in the trainings. And, do not stand right behind the door. Do not put yourself where you can easily be shot. And I think someone said, you know what, let's put a few more couches up against the door. And it worked. And it worked very well. Although I will say this, that's one of the reasons it takes a while to clear the building, is because when they go through, there's a series of procedures they have to go through to clear every room. And everyone is a little concerned. And if you go back, it's happened before. If you look at the Utoya Island shooting in Norway, he actually dressed up in a police uniform and went around and basically deceived people into thinking that he was a police officer and used that as a way to target them.
Yeah.
So there's a very slow protocol you go through, very deliberate protocol to make sure people know you are who you are. In some cases, universities and stuff, they actually have color-coded cards that they will stick under the door and things like that. But it's to make sure that you systematically uncover it. And it takes a while, and that's why we're sitting here waiting. That's what you saw those officers. Yeah. You could clearly see someone worried about being taken under fire, but they were waiting. And that's that careful procedural thing, clearing the building.
I just want to go back to this photo because this is striking. I lived in New York. I worked in New York. I'm very familiar with these commercial high-rise buildings, the grand plazas off 5th, 6th, 7th Avenues. And you're watching this gunman with his weapon in his hand essentially strut. I'm not trying to romanticize him by any means here, but he is so cavalierly and confidently with a purpose going to do this, to carry out this shooting spree, this rampage there. And look at the people behind him. That to me is so striking. What are people there on that plaza in the lobby? How do you respond? How do you react in the moment? We know that there was a security guard, the off-duty NYPD officer. He lost his life trying to secure that building. Should we ask the question, or is it too early, David? whether or not there was enough security on the ground floor in the lobby of this huge building, the Blackstone building in Midtown.
Okay, let me start back with you addressing the photograph first. So, I mean, I can't even, what I'm seeing, I can't believe, because I've probably done this presentation, I don't know, 1,000 times. I just got back from the West Coast. We did this all over the world, all over the country. One of the scenarios that I give is you're walking to work, you're leaving work, and you're walking up and you see someone pull out a rifle or a handgun, and you're right in the middle of a public square like this. You know what happens? We're supposed to it's either fight or flight, right? That's what we're programmed to do. Unfortunately, when most people see something like that is so outside the frame of their daily experience, they freeze. They do. A perfect example of that is you see what happened in the Fort Lauderdale airport attack. It was a shooting at an Apple store up in Albany in 2019. Yep. So that's part one. With respect to security in that particular building, I did work for Route Management. They not only have a secure lobby. We talked about why he went to the 33rd floor. It's very possible that was a controlled car. In other words, when you go in a lot of these buildings, and I believe 345 Park has that system, you just can't go in to an elevator and go wherever you want. You go to usually you go, obviously he did, but usually you go to the security desk. You say, I have an appointment at this floor, and you're let into an elevator that's going to that floor. So it's possible that floor was already pre-programmed. So I don't know. In addition to that, the timing is really interesting because it was 6:30 or so p.m. Now that's after working hours. So if this had been done 4:30, 4 o'clock earlier in the day, you wouldn't have had a handful of people in that building. You would have had hundreds of people in that building. And if he had done this right around 5 o'clock, you would have seen dozens of wounded and probably worse.
Yeah, we're still looking at the scenes. We're in a new hour now. It's 8 o'clock here on the West Coast, 11 p.m. there in the Big Apple in New York City. And so we see the scene still quite active, of course, not as active as it was when law enforcement first responded here. Yet another vantage point. We also have a shot there up in the air overhead. I'm not entirely sure. Yes, that is at the scene. We still, at this hour, see the black BMW, the gunman's vehicle, right where he left it. So, gentlemen, we are going to have to go to a quick commercial break, our first one of this hour. We're going to bring in more analysis, more expertise, just like yourself. David and Hal, thank you so much. I'll give you the final word, though. Hal, you first. Where does this go from here?
Well, I think where it goes from here is we're going to find out what the motive was. Was it mental illness? What caused him to do it? We're going to find more stuff up. But if anything, I think this will be something we'll point to and say, look, we need to reinvigorate the importance of the type of training that saves so many lives today, because it just makes such a crucial difference. You don't have a whole lot of time to react. And hopefully that's what we take from this.
David, final thoughts?
Yeah, I echo what Hal's saying. It's absolutely, training is so important. And one thing I would suggest to your viewers, especially if you're in New York City, for example, you've been experiencing fire drills, non-fire emergencies. In almost every case, the fire life safety director, which is required in every high-rise building in Manhattan, will get on the PA system and tell you, okay, we've got a smoke condition, there's a hazmat spill, whatever the emergency is, they will tell you what to do, with one exception: acts of violence perpetrated by individuals, like active shooter incidents. So wherever you are, if you have any inkling that there's an active shooter or any violent action in your vicinity, do not wait for direction. Do not wait to get more information. If you can get out, avoid the scene. If you can't find a place to barricade yourself, and God forbid, if you're in the same closed environment as the shooter and you can neither avoid nor barricade, you fight for your life.
David Katz, Hal Comfort, thanks so much for your time. I know it's late. We'll definitely be speaking soon as this investigation ramps up. Have a good rest of your night.